In the beginning, the world can feel incredibly unforgiving to someone who feels everything so deeply. Modern culture often celebrates the loudest voice in the room, the relentless extrovert, the one who takes up the most space. For a young, deeply intuitive person, this environment is not just exhausting, it is entirely contrary to their nature. They quickly learn a painful survival mechanism. They learn to blend in, they study the people around them, adopting the necessary traits to avoid conflict, to keep the peace, and to protect their profoundly sensitive hearts from being misunderstood. They become emotional chameleons. They might force a smile, swallow their brilliant but unconventional ideas, and agree with the crowd just to survive another day. Deep down in the quiet sanctuary of their mind, they know exactly who they are, but the fear of rejection is a heavy chain. They desperately crave authentic connection, yet they are terrified that if they reveal their true, unfiltered depths, the world will turn away. And so, they perform. They play the roles assigned to them by friends, family, and society, silently carrying the agonizing weight of their own hidden truth. But time is a relentless teacher, and the sheer energy required to wear a mask eventually runs out. This brings us to the first great transformation, the embrace of radical authenticity. As the years pass, the pain of pretending begins to outweigh the fear of judgment. There comes a defining moment, perhaps in their late 20s or deep into their 30s, where the soul simply whispers, "Enough." They realize that contorting themselves to fit into the small boxes of other people's expectations is suffocating their spirit. The shift is not sudden or explosive. It is a slow, deliberate untangling of the self from the demands of society. They begin to speak their mind, softly but with an iron conviction. They stop laughing at jokes that hurt their values. They stop nodding along to opinions they vehemently oppose. They discover that the people who walk away because of this newfound honesty were never truly meant to stay. And the incredible reward for this bravery is the sudden influx of boundless energy. The exhaustion of pretending dissipates, replaced by a deep, grounded power. They learn that authenticity is the only soil in which true love and belonging can actually grow. The second profound transformation centers on the ocean of their emotions. In their youth, being highly sensitive feels akin to walking through a storm without an umbrella. Every harsh word, every disappointed look, every piece of tragic news on the television strikes them with the force of a physical blow. They are emotional sponges, absorbing the grief, anxiety, and anger of everyone around them until they are entirely depleted. Rejection lingers for months. A minor failure is internalized as a catastrophic flaw in their character. They retreat into their protective shells, believing that their immense capacity to feel is a tragic curse. But as the autumn of their life approaches, a miraculous shift occurs. They do not stop feeling deeply. That is the essence of their humanity. Instead, they become master architects of emotional resilience. They learn the sacred art of the boundary. This resilience changes everything. They begin to understand the critical difference between empathy and self-sacrifice. They can sit with a grieving friend, hold their hand, and offer profound comfort without absorbing that grief into their own bones. They learn to identify their emotional triggers, seeing the storm clouds gathering on the horizon and calmly adjusting their sails. They discover the healing power of solitude, of long walks in the woods, of a quiet cup of tea, and of simply giving themselves permission to rest. They learn the most difficult word in the English language, no. They say it without anger, without apology, and without guilt. They walk away from toxic environments and one-sided relationships with a quiet grace. They realize that their sensitivity is not a wound. It is a highly tuned instrument, a radar for truth, and a wellspring of profound compassion. By protecting their energy, they become a steady, unshakable lighthouse for others, offering guidance without being pulled under the crashing waves. The third great awakening happens within their voice. Imagine possessing a vast, intricate library inside your mind, a place filled with brilliant abstract thoughts, deep psychological insights, and vivid emotional tapestries. Now imagine trying to explain the entire library to someone through a tiny keyhole. This is the struggle of their youth. Their inner world is so incredibly rich and non-linear that translating it into the rigid, linear structure of spoken language feels impossible. In conversations, they often freeze. They worry that their words will be misunderstood or that they will sound completely irrational to more pragmatic minds. They swallow their most beautiful thoughts and choose silence, retreating into the sanctuary of the unsaid. But the agonizing silence cannot last forever. The mature mind learns to build a bridge between their inner sanctuary and the outside world. They begin to master the art of translation. Often, this mastery begins on paper. Through journaling, writing poetry, or carefully composing letters, they find the rhythm of their own voice. They learn how to structure their sweeping visions into clear, impactful sentences. When they bring this newfound skill into conversation, the transformation is stunning. They no longer rush to fill the silence. They pause. They breathe. They speak with a measured, hypnotic cadence that commands respect. They stop over-explaining themselves to those committed to misunderstanding them. They realize that they do not need to prove their depth to the world. They simply need to state their truth clearly and let it stand on its own. They become capable of navigating intense disagreements with an elegant calm, disagreeing without disrespecting, and standing firm like an ancient tree in the wind. Their words, once trapped behind walls of fear, become instruments of healing, inspiration, and profound change for those fortunate enough to listen. The fourth transformation is perhaps the most heartbreaking, yet ultimately the most necessary. It is the long, difficult journey of balancing pure idealism with cold, hard realism. From the moment they open their eyes to the world, they are dreamers. They hold a crystal-clear vision of how beautiful, fair, and loving human existence is supposed to be. But stepping out into the real world is like waking up from a dream by being thrown into freezing water. They witness cruelty, selfishness, broken systems, and endless injustice. For a young idealist, this disparity is agonizing. It can lead to severe cynicism, a paralyzing despair, and a desire to completely withdraw from a society that feels fundamentally flawed. They carry the immense, crushing guilt of wanting to fix a broken planet all by themselves, feeling like a failure every time the world disappoints them. But wisdom brings a beautiful, pragmatic shift. The older they get, the more they realize that condemning the darkness does absolutely nothing to bring forth the dawn. They do not abandon their beautiful dreams. They simply learn how to lay the bricks to build them. They stop demanding instant perfection from humanity and start looking for the quiet, hidden goodness that exists in small moments. They transition from a frustrated visionary to a patient architect. Instead of trying to save the entire world, they focus on their immediate surroundings. They volunteer, they mentor, they plant a garden, they nurture their family. They ask a simple, powerful question: what small, tangible good can I do right here, right now, with what I have? They learn to celebrate the tiny victories. They extend grace to the flawed people around them, understanding that everyone is fighting a hard battle. By marrying their lofty ideals with practical, daily action, they stop burning out. They become a steady force for good, proving that true idealism is not about escaping reality, but about transforming it one quiet act of love at a time. The fifth way they transform is through the quiet cultivation of radical patience and acceptance. Youth is so often defined by a burning urgency, a desperate race to find one's ultimate purpose, to secure the perfect soulmate, to figure out the grand meaning of the universe before the clock runs out. For a mind that constantly analyzes the future, this urgency creates a perpetual state of exhausting anxiety. They feel like they are always running out of time, always behind schedule, always falling short of their own magnificent potential. They fight against the current of life, trying to force doors open that are tightly locked, and drowning in frustration when the universe refuses to bend to their timeline. Yet, as the silver begins to touch their hair and the lines of genuine laughter and deep sorrow trace their face, a profound surrender takes place. They learn to trust the slow, mysterious rhythm of existence. They realize that life is not a rigid schedule to be executed, but a wild, beautiful river to be navigated. They stop trying to force the flowers to bloom before spring has arrived. They discover that the periods of waiting, the quiet winters of the soul that used to drive them mad, are actually the very seasons where their deepest growth occurs. They embrace radical acceptance. They accept that there are questions that will never have clear answers. They accept that they cannot heal people who are not ready to be healed. They forgive themselves for not being perfect. This acceptance washes over them like a warm, cleansing rain, washing away decades of chronic anxiety. They slow down. They learn to savor the morning sunlight, the taste of a good meal, the simple comfort of a quiet room. They realize that just being alive, breathing, and experiencing the world is a magnificent purpose in itself. Finally, the sixth transformation brings them to a position they spent their entire youth actively running away from, the mantle of leadership. In their early years, the very concept of being a leader feels entirely foreign and incredibly unappealing. Society paints a picture of leaders as aggressive, commanding, loud figures who dominate boardrooms and crave the spotlight. The quiet soul looks at this model and recoils. They prefer the shadows. They want to be the hidden advisor, the silent supporter behind the scenes, far away from the harsh glare of public scrutiny and the heavy burden of command. They chronically underestimate their own incredible power, convinced that their gentle nature makes them completely unfit to lead anyone anywhere. But as they mature, the definition of leadership evolves before their eyes. They begin to notice that the loudest person in the room is rarely the wisest. They see organizations failing, families fracturing, and communities suffering because of ego-driven leadership. And slowly, a quiet courage rises within them. They realize that true leadership is not about dominance. It is about deep, unconditional service. It is about possessing a vision that includes the welfare of everyone. Because they have spent their lives observing human nature, they know exactly how to motivate, heal, and unite people. They step into leadership not out of a desire for power, but out of a profound sense of duty and love. When they finally step forward, they become the most beloved and effective kind of leader. The servant leader. They lead with immense empathy, listening far more than they speak. They create safe spaces where others feel truly seen and valued. They do not bark orders. They inspire quiet devotion through their own unwavering moral compass. They guide their teams, their families, and their communities with a calm, steady hand, steering the ship safely through the darkest storms. People naturally gravitate toward them, seeking the profound peace and clarity that radiates from their very presence. They prove to the world that softness is not fragility, and that the most powerful force on earth is a quiet heart fiercely dedicated to the greater good. The journey of aging is a sacred passage for all of us, but for this deeply intuitive soul, it is nothing short of a masterpiece being slowly unveiled. They spend their youth trying to figure out how to fit themselves into a world that was simply not built for them. But in their later years, they stop trying to fit in, and they start building a world of their own, a world built on absolute truth, emotional wisdom, profound patience, and quiet, enduring love. They shed the insecurities, the exhausting masks, and the crippling expectations of society, emerging as a creature of immense grace and quiet power. They do not just grow older, they grow entirely free, and in finding their own freedom, they become a guiding light for the rest of us, reminding us all of the profound beauty of finally coming home to exactly who we were always meant to be.